All right. All right. The comic binge is back. Second time this week. I'm pretty impressed with myself. I'm going to try my hardest right now to get back into doing 2 shows a week. I normally I call you guys the faithful 25 because I just feel like there's only 25 people who actually watch these videos, and I really appreciate every one of you 25 people. It's probably a little more or a little less. I don't know. It doesn't matter because I do this because I love comic books. And if this is the first time you're joining the show, this is the Mega Chill stream. I've had a number of these where I have all my friends on, and we've just had a blast. We just talk anything comics. Same thing goes in this episode, but I'm switching things up a little bit. I'm going to try a couple different things. Today, I'm going to try kind of going forward to do Mega Chill streams and include Indie Kicks a part of it. My buddy Dennis helped me out, who lettered Space Demons. Very, very excited to talk about Space Demons at one point again. But yeah, he told me, why don't you combine the both of them? I'm like, that's a good point, Dennis. Why don't I just do that? So I decided to do that. And today I've got someone I just met at Emerald City Comic Con. I just kind of ran into his booth out of nowhere. I bought his comic that you see before you, or a page, or a splash page. I'm not sure what this was from. Splash page. Whatever, it doesn't matter. This is, I picked up his comic. It's called The OZ. I loved it, and I wanted to have him on, and he agreed. I can't wait to talk about it. I'm joined with, I guess, my new friend, David Pepose. Pepose, right?
Yeah, you got it on the first try.
Hi.
And that is not something that everybody does in the first try. It's very nice to be on the show. Thank you all for having me. If you don't know me, my name is David Pepose. I'm the Ringo Award-winning writer of books like Spencer and Locke, Going to the Chapel, The OZ, and Scout's Honor, with some more fun stuff coming in 2022 and 2023. I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, man. And I don't remember. I meant to actually tell you this before we recorded, but I just remember now because we're just hanging out. I want to say, I think I saw your Kickstarter, a link on it a while ago, because I grew up an Oz fan, and it's mainly because I grew up on Return to Oz. That was my jam.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that was the same for you. Are you not a Return to Oz person?
I'm a Return to Oz, and that is obviously in the OZ, deep in the OZ's DNA.
Well, Jack is in it, so
yeah. Just the idea of kind of like taking Frank Baum's very iconic mythology, and that was really the first Oz remix, or the first big Oz remix.
Well, they combined both two books together, right? And they kind of amalgam together, which is still a remix. It was still a remix, totally.
And just even just the aesthetic of it all.
Right.
It's much darker and intense than the iconic Judy Garland film. And it really stood with me. It freaked me out a little as a kid, but
God.
As an adult, revisiting it, I really appreciated it a lot. And I think that's sort of my bread and butter, is finding sort of these time-honored classics and remixing them. And I think that's kind of part of where I got that from.
Really? Oh, that's crazy. I don't know about you, but the Wheelers, they still scare the shit out of me. Yeah. And I'm not even trying to be joking. I'm like, they are legitimately scary.
Yeah, no, it's body horror.
True. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a little bit of some Wheelers in our second issue coming up.
I was going to ask you that too. When I was reading. Hold on, I'm going to grab it too. I'm going to post it to see. It's on my spinner rack right here. Yeah. I'll actually have an actual poster or a picture of it too. I bought this book at Emerald City Comic Con. I swear, I saw a Kickstarter of this. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, because when I saw it, I think I meant to go back and go fund it, but I have ADHD, so I just got distracted and probably forgot about it.
Yeah.
But I remember, because the image of the Tin Man, if you will. Yeah. I actually remember the name, David. You should be very happy with me. I'm terrible with names. Yeah. But I remember it looks familiar, and I remember going back and looking for this Kickstarter, or I meant to go back and fund it or something like that. I remember I was like, and I always remember there was a cool independent comic that looked like it was Oz, but it was a little bit different. And randomly, I was at Emerald City Comic Con with my buddy Alex from Comic Book Historians. I'm not sure if you ever watched that YouTube channel. You should watch it. It's awesome. He's hilarious. Alex is super cool, dude. Anyway, I was palling around, like helping him record stuff, and I'm not sure what booth you were by. Was it by Bob Hall? Were you by Bob Hall?
Yeah, I think it was near Bob.
Yeah. Because you're like you're on the end, and he was kind of like diagonal from you on the right, from your right.
Yeah.
And I just kind of looked down, and I was like, okay, because I was looking for I want to support independent book people. I'm an independent writer myself now, and Space Demons, Webtoons, and I was just kind of want to support and get to know some people, and maybe have them on the show or whatever. And I looked down, and I was like, the hell? I was like, wait a minute, I know this book. And then I had to leave, and I'm like, I gotta go back. Or no, you weren't there. And so I said to myself, I gotta go back. I gotta pick this up. And so I went back and got it, and I got to talk to you for a minute, and you agreed to come on the show, and I'm like, because I had a feeling I was gonna like this. I'm like, I could just tell, I'm like, I'm gonna like this, and I gotta tell you, I read it over the weekend. Like I think I read it on Sunday. I just enjoyed, or no, it was Monday morning, because I dropped my daughter off at daycare, and then I sat down and read this, and I just was blown away how much I like this. It's so much fun, and as an Oz fan myself, as I read the books when I was a kid. I love the movies. I mean, Return to Oz is one of my all-time favorites. That full disclosure, I love it, and I definitely got, like you said, Return to Oz vibes in it. I loved it, and I was like, man, I can't wait to talk to him about this book and just anything in comics in general, because I thought it was a really, in my experience in reading independent comics for a long time here or there, I can't always connect independent comics. And I think it's a lot with independent art in general. Some people just get it and it works, and some people just don't. And it's just kind of, it's kind of all over the place in any kind of genre or not genre, or medium, right? Music, I'm a musician. I've heard plenty of bands and music but it's really cool when you find someone who's doing it, like, because they love it so much. And again, I'm assuming you love comics, but right. You could tell it's in here, and it's in the lifeblood of the comic. And I was telling you before the show, I was really impressed. The storytelling, it felt very, everything felt natural and great. It felt like it honestly didn't. I'm surprised someone doesn't pick this up, like a maker company doesn't say we could push this out. And maybe someone will. Maybe you're going to tell me that someone already is. I don't know, but they should, because it's freaking great. So anyway, I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
No, not at all. I appreciate all the kind things you're saying about the book. It's the OZ is a special book to me. It was my third series to come out. We had done 2 volumes of my breakout book, Spencer and Locke, and then my action rom-com, Going to the Chapel. And the OZ had been in development for a long time. Mm-hmm. And, the way it is in the comics industry, and I don't think I'm kind of talking out of school, is especially when you're kind of getting your start, it's a lot of knocking on doors. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. And often your ideas are kind of at the whim of whatever's going on at any particular moment. We had pitched the OZ all over town, and we had plenty of publishers who were expressing interest. But then something would catch on fire on their end, and they'd have to go put out that fire, and then we'd have to kind of start over from the beginning. You've kind of what was a breaking point for me was Going to the Chapel's trade paperback came out, and within a couple of weeks, the COVID pandemic hit. Oh. And the Diamond distributors had their shutdown. There was a real ripple effect going on throughout the comics industry. I mean, there are weeks where there was just no new comics, and that kind of coincided with something that a lot of friends have been talking to me about, which was Kickstarter. I'm good friends with Charlie Stickney, the creator of White Ash, who is probably one of the biggest Kickstarter success stories. Ryland Grant, who had done a few Kickstarters, David Schrader, who had done a few Kickstarters, Russell Nahelty, Pat Shand, Kat Kalamia. I knew a lot of people who had done Kickstarters, and they were all telling me, you really need to do a Kickstarter. It's a whole other demographic that you've done no outreach to, because you've just been doing direct market work. Mm-hmm. And with Diamond having their shutdown, all the publishers that we've been talking to, they're already narrow acquisitions pipelines, really constricted hard.
Right.
And, So I decided, why not take the plunge? I can give Kickstarter a go, and I can introduce myself to that community with our absolute A game. Working with artist Ruben Rojas and colorist Whitney Kogar and letterer Dave Hopkins. They're really a dream team for the OZ.
Yeah.
And that first campaign really kind of shattered any expectations I would have expected. We wound up making, including backer kit, we wound up cracking $50,000 just on that first Kickstarter.
Wow.
We won a Ringo Award just back in October for it, for best single issue or story, which is a huge kind of career-long dream. And for a self-published Kickstarter book, it really is even sweeter. And yeah, we just wrapped up our second Kickstarter in the fall. We're very excited for that. Ruben is just wrapping up in his last pages now. And then we'll sort of get everything colored and lettered and sent off to the printer. But yeah, it's a really special book. And I think it's because it really taught me some important lessons that, not only, can you find talent and quality work, but sometimes people don't necessarily know the value of, that some people don't necessarily, that they aren't willing to stick their neck out on. And that's okay. As a creator, you shouldn't have to ask somebody for permission to create.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love Kickstarter as a platform for how empowering it is for creators. And it sort of allows creators to tell stories that might not have survived or thrived in the traditional publishing apparatus.
Totally.
Yeah, it's just a different demographic. It's a different market than the Wednesday Warriors or the con crowd.
Right.
And I think it's incumbent upon creators to really kind of reach out to these different subgroups of readerships and invite them to the same table.
That's a really good point. I've seen a lot of YouTubers on comic book YouTubers kind of talk about how, like, is Kickstarter like the future? Is it not the future? And it's almost like I feel like there's a, and I don't want to say like I'm being negative on these people. That's kind of their insight, and they know way more about the industry than I do. But they'll be like, Kickstarters are the negative. It's like it's not, or it's not a foundation you can build things on. And that's probably right, and I think from a long-term sense. But I think what's really fascinating, what you're telling me here, is that actually, you're not really saying it is this long-term thing either. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm getting the idea, like but it's still a credible thing. It's its own readership. It's like it's not. Yeah, it's not the same people. That was that. I never thought of it like that. It's not the same people.
It's not the same people. I honestly, I probably would see Kickstarter with maybe even an even more optimistic lens than some of the people that you've discussed.
Right.
Because, as long as the book is of a certain level of quality, and as long as you deliver your rewards on time, and as long as you are sort of releasing installments on a fairly
regular basis,
clip. And when I say that, I mean, annually. I really do think that Kickstarter can build. I think, for example, I mean, our second Kickstarter, which was done kind of in a chaotic period, we still made a really good amount of money on that second Kickstarter. And I think something that a lot of people might not realize is that crowdfunding, especially when it's done sort of, really aggressively, you can, it can be a lot more financially lucrative and viable than the direct market.
Right.
Where oftentimes you are sort of expected to put up the money up front to get the book out. And then you sort of hope and pray that the book breaks even, that you're able to get royalties on the back end. And Kickstarter, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go into debt making these books. You can handle your upfront costs and still have something left over and have a product to sell at conventions. And then if you wind up deciding you want to have a second home in the direct market, you can do that. I do think the overlap between the direct market readership and the Kickstarter readership it's there, but it's, I think, minimal. And I think publishers are starting to realize that. I think when you see creators like Scott Snyder, doing Kickstarters, which we were very fortunate that the OZ launched on the same day as Scott Snyder launched Noctera.
Oh, wow.
I think we had a really powerful wind at our back.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
So many people joining Kickstarter because of Scott, who I consider a friend and a very nice guy. He's been very supportive of my career since my first book. And, that's the great thing about Kickstarter as an ecosystem is that's their business model. They want to show you everybody else's books. They don't want you to just buy one book. And so every time you send out an update, you get ads for a bunch of other people's books.
Right.
Kickstarter sends emails. If you're following a project, they will send you reminders saying, hey, like you still haven't backed the project yet. There's a lot in the Kickstarter ecosystem that I think kind of helps drum up business. And I think sometimes they're as aggressive, if not more so, than some direct market publishers. So
right.
I think there's certainly a place for creators to build a platform for themselves using just Kickstarter, or you can alternate between using Kickstarter and the direct market, which is kind of how I've operated. Honestly, the recent controversy with blockchain notwithstanding, which, if I had a crystal ball and knew how this was going to shake out, I'd be doing something more lucrative than comics. But I think, barring some sort of cataclysmic implosion of the platform as a result of that,
right.
I really do think that Kickstarter right now is still the most viable platform for independent creators who either, aren't sort of catering to what direct market publishers are looking for.
Yeah.
Or, just don't want to affiliate with a publisher at all. I still think that it's a really empowering place for creators. And I hope that it sticks around for a long time.
That, I'm not sure if you know who Jim Owsley is. He wrote Butcher Queen for Red 5 Comics, and I had him on here. He was doing a Kickstarter for Atonement Bell, and awesome dude. And you get him on the show again. It's awesome. And he came on and just started spitting knowledge about Kickstarter because he's done a number of them. And you're doing the same thing here. You're just kind of blowing my mind of like, man, it's maybe this is I'm too dumb to not realize what all this stuff is, but like you're giving me lots of good insight of the fact that the markets for Kickstarter, the direct market, and whatever the casual people, they're so different. It's a different demographic, and I'm like, damn, I didn't think about that. And and Jim, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think the other thing that, and this is a question you asked me before we started recording, where you were saying, I noticed in the OZ, you've got sort of a chapter break in the middle of the issue. And I said that I would explain why that was, and that it's not as smart as it looks. It was just a reason for it, which is, when I wrote the OZ, I had written the vast majority of the series before we decided to Kickstarter it. I think I may have finished the series at that point. And I had written it as 6 standard-sized issues, 22 pages long.
Yeah.
And I realized that, that's a big difference with Kickstarter. It's already a higher price point because you have to add in shipping, and people want to feel like there's something unique and exciting.
Tangible.
And how do you differentiate things for the direct market if we ever wanted to go that route? And I realized that the number one thing you do is you pace the book differently. And so if we did a double-sized issue on Kickstarter, our Kickstarter backers feel like they're getting extra value. And then meanwhile, if we ever decided to go to the direct market down the line, which is not that is not a calculus that we've even started yet.
But just in case, right? You never know.
We could split it, into 6 normal-sized issues.
Damn.
And so, and between that and sort of figuring out just different covers for the direct market, suddenly you have a product that it's very different for the Kickstarter backers versus the direct market backers.
Oh man.
And so that was it was something that, I didn't want to back myself into a corner.
Right.
And so it wound up being a win-win situation. Our readers felt like they were getting a lot of bang for their buck. And if we ever down the line decided to, that, hey, is there a publisher that would want to sort of distribute this to the greater world? It's easy. There are natural points in the script where things can be, broken up. So yeah, it's definitely it's a different market than the direct market. But I think they can coexist, and I think publishers
absolutely.
recognize that.
Yeah, no, totally.
Retailers are starting to notice to recognize that. I think just like Comixology was demonized, over a decade ago. Are digital comics going to cannibalize the direct market? And then we realized no. If anything, it's a little bit additive.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah,
the exact same thing with Kickstarter. But it's done in a way that I think is financially equitable for creators. It allows creators to make their work without going into debt over it. And then if they decide to go to the direct market and make some more money on top of that, that's fantastic. But I think creators are realizing that you don't need to leave money on the table, and that you can, if you're willing to put in the work, then it really can pay dividends, both in readers and financially. You
and Jim and Charlie too. Charlie writes Spider Squirrel. It's a super fun book. If you haven't read that, oh my God, it's super fun. You guys have just been so blessing me as someone who's a writer. I say up and coming writer, meaning like I'm just trying to write stuff in general, not like up and coming.
Own it, come on, man. Yeah.
All right, I David. I already like you. Every time I have one of you guys on, I'm always like, man, I like this guy. This guy's cool. I knew we'd be bros when we talked, and I really appreciate it. And Charlie and Jim, I've had you guys on. You guys were awesome, and same thing. You're giving me a lot of knowledge because again, I told you the reason why for Space Demons. I haven't told the audience, so don't talk about it too much. But Space Demons is created because I'm doing a bigger thing, and I was thinking to myself, how am I going to produce this idea I have that's really important to me and have it still be, again, I was kind of wrestling with like, is it a graphic novel or single issues? I'm like, I don't know. And honestly, after reading the OZ now and after talking to you, I'm like, God damn. I might just need to combine 2 issues together. And I'm like, that's a goddamn good idea, and but the way you broke it down was so perfect. Like you leave yourself open for, if you want to do direct market, you have it there. For a graphic novel, it gives people the people that Kickstarter, the whole demographic, it gives them a way to tangible. And this is why I love what you did. Now, for those who don't know, guys, this is why I love Mega Chill streams, dude. I love when it gets kind of goes off the rails a little bit in the best way. What I love about your book is that this was $10, okay? And when I picked it up, it's a quality product. Like I'm not bullshitting. I'm being serious. Like this is the paper's great. I love the hard cardstock. Is that what they call it? Cardstock of cover.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it was like, right now, comics are what? And again, I'm not sure if you're reading mainstream comics or buying mainstream comics, but like Marvel, DC, those $4.99, $5.99 each, right? Like that's easy, right off the table. That's a lot. Your comic is already like, when I go and buy this for $10, it's 2 issues. So I'm assuming I haven't counted the pages. So I'm assuming 40 plus pages, almost 50. I'm assuming around there, somewhere between 40 and 50. If it's 20 plus pages. Maybe more. I don't know. Yeah. $10 for this for 40 pages. Like that's solid. Like that's a solid sell. And I want people to know that. And then when I picked up your book, because I didn't know how many pages it was. I was like, I'm gonna pick this up and support a homie because I want to support independent comics. And I'm like, well, this thing's kind of like, this is a nice product. I was like, all right. And I was like, this is thick. I'm like, huh. I didn't know if this was going to be like a second issue or And I remember just thinking as I'm reading, I'm like, this is a good, I'm sitting down and getting a good quality, entertaining story that it's, and again, I love 22-page comic stories. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But it was really cool to sit down and go, I really felt I got a good chunk of story for this, for my, for what I paid for it. And so I think that's what I really cool about what you're doing, because again, this will be a different podcast, and I'm going to have you on and other people on in the industry to talk about this. I think this is kind of the future as far as this style, because this reminds me of also, again, I'm not sure if you're reading this or not. See, this is why the spinner rack, I just do this. Like, oh, are you reading any of these? I'm not sure if you read the Black Label DC books at all, but if you don't know me very well, David, but I'm a diehard Marvel zombie. I have lived and breathed. I am on a Marvel podcast called the MCU Fan Show. It's all about MCU stuff, and I've been doing it with my buddy Sean for many, many years. And people only know me as a Marvel guy. And it's crazy to me because I've been reading these DC books, the Black Label books. I'm not sure if you're reading any Black Label. Have you read any of these at all?
I've read some of them, but
Okay.
I'm usually reading them digitally. You're gonna drop me some knowledge, I'm sure, about the.
Okay. All right. Well, no, drop some knowledge. No. So what I'm gonna see, I'm not even trying to be funny here. I'm actually trying to looking for I'm gonna use a spinner rack here. This is one of my favorite comics from last year. This is the Three Jokers.
Sure.
And or year before, whatever. And the weird thing about Black Label is that it would come in like either magazine sized or this. Which and this Jeff Lemire, I love Jeff Lemire. His Batman and Robin is the same thing as the Three Jokers. It's in the bag and board, and I'm too lazy to bring it out. But this is a normal comic size, and like your book, it's got a nice paper. I mean, cardstock. And this was $5.99. Okay, so if I buy two of these, it's already way more than like your book is, and it's almost. I mean, like, theirs has a little, like, the only difference is they have the super fancy thing they probably paid a lot of money for is on this side, right? Whereas yours doesn't have that, but like it's as thick and as nice as theirs.
I do that so we can kind of set the price as needed. It's one of those things I don't want to mislead anybody too much in that the reason why you may have gotten a better deal than most because
right.
at conventions I kind of adjust my price point accordingly, knowing that when you have the OZ up against 4 full trades, you got to go a little lower than what it usually is on the Kickstarter itself. But I think to speak to that point, the difference also being is that when you buy the OZ at a con, you get just the OZ. Whereas that's the cool thing about Kickstarter.
All the extras.
Advertise the reward system.
Yeah, exactly.
We were giving our backers, our physical backers, not only were they getting free digital copies of the book, they were getting behind the scenes materials on the whole thing.
Yeah,
and they were getting the raw inks, colors, and script pages.
That's rad. That's cool.
They were getting for our first Kickstarter, they got a theme song that we had recorded for the book. They got a free print, a free sticker. I think once you hit a certain price point, you got a free enamel pin.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's the cool thing about Kickstarter is like, you want readers to feel like they're getting plenty of bang for their buck. They also got PDFs of the first issue of Spencer and Locke and Going to the Chapel. And they actually wound up getting also a digital comics extravaganza from just a bunch of my friends. So
that's cool.
They wound up getting they wound up getting something like 15 comics.
Jeez.
For $20.
That's so worth it.
I feel like that's the thing about Kickstarter, and it's a little bit of a puzzle. Is you want to figure out, all right, how do I keep the momentum going? How do I keep people excited? How do I keep adding value to this book in a way that's not going to break the budget or screw up your shipping or screw up the timetable? Beyond sort of the book being printed itself. And so that's it's one of those things that I think value and quality are kind of the two things that you're really focusing on when you're a Kickstarter creator. I think the Kickstarter crowd especially, they want kind of these artisanal comics that have a strong personal voice but are of a certain level of quality both in the execution and the print production that you might not see in sort of the week in, week out Wednesday Warrior comics. So it's a different animal, and it's a different way of doing things. And I love the Marvel and DC and Image and Boom and Aftershock and everybody else just as much as the next guy. I've done work at plenty of direct market publishers. I have a career based on them just as much as I do on Kickstarter. It's just a different beast, and it's a fun environment to get to play in.
Yeah, and so what I think what was really cool about the idea of putting two books together instead of having just selling one is that it feels like you're getting a really good, like, solid, like, sit down. And that's the thing. And that for me was, I really liked what you said about that. Like, it's like, I put two together. It really feels like you're getting something, Again, I love 22-page stories. And I know I could tell you mapped it out that way. I mean, I could tell, but it was awesome. I just felt like I was getting a lot
We got
in it.
very lucky. Don't give me too much credit in that. I had written the 6 issues.
Right.
Decided, maybe we'll go to Kickstarter. It kind of hit me like, oh, these issues pair together nicely.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
It's an even number, but also, just the way that the structure kind of had already unfolded. I was like, oh yeah, like I could have issues 1 and 2 together, and issues 3 and 4 together work nicely, and issues 5 and 6 also work well. And so, it was a little bit of serendipity, but I think that's something that I'm going to take into consideration for future Kickstarters. Is just
for sure.
I like sort of this double page element. It's also for a logistical standpoint.
Yeah.
Doing a Kickstarter, fulfilling Kickstarter is hard. It's challenging, and fulfilling 3 Kickstarters for the OZ will tax my sanity a lot less than doing 6 of them.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
It's one of those things. Like, I would like to do 3 Kickstarters per book, ideally
per story or whatever,
series, and so this is kind of a good way to sort of maximize sort of the number of readers we can get and sort of the financial output, while kind of minimizing like just the sheer exposure and difficulties of just getting the book out.
Yeah, and so what I love about the whole double page thing, double size, whatever, is that, and going back to the Black Label thing, what I think, and this is a whole different like podcast we'll do this on, and again, I have to have you professionals on here, because sure. I'm curious what, the cool debates we could have. I think the future is basically of the Wednesday Warriors is this model. So meaning I think the days of the 22-page format is awesome. I love it. But I think it's just, for me as a writer and as a fan, as one who loves the medium, it's just hard. It's like, it's getting too expensive. And I feel like the future, what we need to do is don't put out so much content, put a little bit less, condense it like you did here, as far as like, instead of doing 6 comics, you did 3. And you're getting 3 quality stories, and you release it just like in the Black Label. They don't release it every month, right? They release like 3 or 4 a year, and that's it. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what. And I've loved so many of these the Black Label series are so good. I haven't read all of them, but I read a number of them, and I love them. And the quality is great. I feel that this will take over the periodicals. So you'll have something like this where it's very user friendly, and then you have the legacy number like Marvel does in the corner. That way you keep your periodicals, and they're coming out every 3, 4, 5 times a month, or not month, a year. You have the legacy number in, but you get more bang for your buck. It's a real thick story instead of just like 22 pages and go to the next week. So that's kind of my thinking.
It's tough because on the one hand, I understand from sort of a consumer standpoint that of course,
right.
The longer the read, the more satisfying it is. From a production standpoint, though, I think I think there's always going to be a limit, and I think the reason why the monthly floppy has persisted in the way that it has is because that's sort of the frequency that artists can get something out.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I mean, if you want to do double the issues or double the pages, it's usually double the weight in between installments.
Right.
That's another difference between Kickstarter and the Wednesday Warriors. Kickstarter, they're used to sort of, they order the book, they wait a while, it comes in, there's a little while in between installments. It's sort of built into the platform. Wednesday Warriors, however, they're sort of baked into thinking of things week to week, month to month. And I think the problem is that a lot of the Black Label books that you're mentioning, somebody like Jeff Lemire, for example, or Batman Imposter,
so good.
Andrea Sorrentino, who I think is just a superlatively talented artist. However, what would a book like that have the legs that it has if you didn't know who Andrea Sorrentino was, or if you didn't know who Jeff Lemire was. And I think that's the problem, is that somebody like Jeff and Andrea, I mean, they made their bones on weekly books, so they are on monthly books. So
I see your point. Yeah.
Coming out on a fairly frequent basis, and people got to know them, and that's how they sort of built their superstardom. I do think, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately, is, there are creators who, they're well known. They do, their creator owned stuff seasonally, and they hit a certain level, but I think it's still considered mid tier at best. That, like, the way that you really crack your way into superstardom in a way that sort of your name draws a substantial enough readership to make books like this financially feasible, is you got to sort of eventually crack your way into that monthly market and doing it long term. So I think that's why so many people are so they want to do ongoings, particularly at Marvel and DC, is because that's how you sort of get your name out there, and that's how you get your style exposed to so many people. And don't get me wrong, like I think it's always, I'm always going to do my creator owned work seasonally, because I that sort of thing would be very challenging. But if I ever got the opportunity to do a licensed book on a monthly basis, of course I would jump on that.
Of course, yeah, I would too, yeah.
And I think that's sort of the backbone of the comics industry, the direct market, as we see it right now.
It is right now. I think it could change, though. That's my thinking, because I feel that for the medium to grow past what it is now, we have to go past comic book stores, because even though I grew up on monthlies, the format where people consume media like is just so much different. And I feel that because comics have taken a life of its own, which is again a whole different podcast as far as like the continuity and everything, I feel what I like about those books is that they're more welcoming, and I think the way it's presented, it feels like it's a story. It's a very condensed story. I feel that if they incorporated that idea, they got away with. They can have their cake and eat it too. They can keep the Wednesday Warriors and still have your periodicals come out and then focus on, and really focus on quality stories that keep people engaged in the stories. And that's the problem right now, is I feel that to get the mainstream audience into comic books and getting into like reading on a regular basis, the quality needs to go up. And I feel the quality hasn't always been there, because it's a factory. It's Tom King called it. He thinks monthly comics like blue collar. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's very blue collar, and I think I love it. I think there's credit there, but I just feel like and also in my opinion, this is my opinion, the art kind of suffers a lot on the monthly format, because for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not an artist. I suck at doing lines, just anything. The artists back in the day could put out 3 comics a month, artists or whatever. I mean, I'm being ridiculous, but now they could barely do, just 10 books a year. And again, I'm not saying that's bad, but it's just, they're rushing a lot, so it feels like maybe it'd be better for, instead of Amazing Spider-Man coming out twice a month, but like be maybe only 8 times a year, or, whatever.
I think to speak to the point that you're making, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that is.
Right. Yeah. Right.
The expected sophistication of the art. I think people are expecting a lot more sophistication on that. In a post Brian Hitch world, there's a lot of details that need to be done. I think also, the churn for talent across the board is moving a lot faster.
Yeah.
Whether you're a writer or an artist, if you stay at it long enough, and you sort of deliver enough of the goods, people, especially artists, you see somebody like Andrea Sorrentino, for example, just
brilliant,
out in the mix. I mean, I remember when he was doing Green Arrow in the New 52, which is not, that it's not exactly like the most A-list of A-list books over at DC. And
No.
once you hit a certain point in the stratosphere, your projects become prestige projects. You're doing your
Right.
image books where you've got, a long runway, and, and you kind of are doing what you want. Although the downside with books like that is that sometimes the schedule goes out of whack. And then that's why there are creator-owned books that go in hiatus for a long time, and that kind of hurts things in general. But I
Yeah.
think as a result, I think the major publishers, they're sort of scrambling a little bit more. It means that when you're starting out, you're often a little greener. They're sort of just looking to throw bodies at things.
True.
And what, 10 years ago, you might have needed a few years to sort of build your way up. Now you need a few less years to build up. It's a good thing, but, it sort of means it's a little bit of a trial by fire. And I think you bring up a good point of, like, yeah, there are books that double ship, and that's going to change the nature of the art game entirely. And I also think that by virtue of the publishers sort of getting as they have, because there's so much demand for content, there's so many people demanding to make content that,
Yeah.
I think sometimes there winds up being unexpected hurdles as a result.
Yeah.
I mean, I got my start as an intern at DC Comics, and so I know
Oh,
a little
wow.
bit about how the sausage is made.
Oh, totally. Okay. Rad.
As far as that goes, and you'd be surprised at, like, there are a lot of ideas or solutions or workarounds that, like, man in the street, like, you'd think, oh, well, that seems obvious. And the thing is like, it's obvious to the creators too, but sometimes they aren't allowed to use that.
Right. Right.
It could be, a Justice League roster, for example.
Mhm.
Dwayne McDuffie talked a lot about this before he passed. Was he was told all sorts of editorial conflicts. He couldn't get certain characters because their status quos were being changed in their own books.
Sure.
And it's the one downside about a shared universe, is that you got to share that universe.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think it can clog up the pipeline in a way that I think a lot of readers would never expect. It's very counterintuitive. It's
Yeah.
the downside of working in corporate. So
Right.
sometimes there's red tape. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think there's a lot of factors at play. I think sometimes it's just kind of finding the right talent for the right books, and like you said, I don't say that this is a pejorative, but there is a little bit more of a factory mentality, and just the way the books come out. It's sheer numbers, and just by the law of statistics, that means not everything is going to connect. You're going to throw things against the wall, and sometimes it's just not the right fit. And you try your best, and as a creator, sometimes you just got to roll with that. That is the one benefit of being creator owned, is you don't necessarily have to roll with that, but as a result, then you're a little more seasonal.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's one of those things. It's like, I think about floppies, and I think about the direct market, and I think about comic shops, and it's a lot like democracy. It's like, it's got its fair share of dysfunction, but I feel like thus far it's sort of the best system we have. I don't want to mislead anybody by saying, oh, Kickstarter is sort of the end all be all that's going to supplant monthly comics. I consider it to be additive. For me in particular, my Kickstarter success would not have gone anywhere without having a direct market stuff to show people first.
Of course. Right.
Of that readership. It's a symbiosis,
Right.
And I love the prestige projects just as much as the next guy.
Right.
But I think it's rare to have something of like the sheer artistic quality that I think you and I are talking about.
Sure. I see what you're saying.
For example, it's one of those things. You got to be at a certain level to put out a saga every month, And it'd be great to have a whole team of Babe Ruths, but there's only one Babe Ruth,
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's an ongoing process, and I think, there are disruptions that make the process a lot harder, both within and without the industry.
Right. Mhm.
And but I think at the same time, it comes in waves and ebbs and flows. And I think even sort of the chaotic moments, they do provide certain opportunities.
Mhm.
I mean, you see the creators that all went to Substack, for example,
Yeah.
and they're first off, they're making hand over fist. Good on them,
Yeah.
and they're trying sort of a new outlet. I
Yeah.
have no idea if it's going to succeed or
Yeah.
fail.
Seriously.
And I say that not even sarcastically. Like I don't. Who
Yeah.
knows what sort of the reports are going to say a year after this all goes down. But as a result, it means also there's more opportunities for people in the mid tiers,
Yeah.
where there are publishers who are like, all right, like it's a changing of the guard. I can safely say, like, I've gotten a lot of opportunities this summer that I don't think I would have gotten even a year ago. And
Hmm.
while my own books, I think, have opened some of those doors, it's also just been the nature of the industry has opened those
Hmm.
doors. And I think there's always going to be time for new blood, and I think there's always going to be time for people to try new things. And some of that is like the Black Label stuff,
Right.
where it's coming out on a more quarterly basis. But I think it's still a different animal, and I don't think the comics industry. I think the comics industry could survive without a Black Label. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think it could survive in its current form without monthlies.
At this point, I don't think you could just do it one for like just all of a sudden replace it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it would have to be a gradual thing, which I think. But that's what I guess my point is. I don't think you just say it out of nowhere. I think in 10 years, I would not be shocked if there were more, if the monthly format was more quarterly format, and it was a lot more centered around a story, a specific story, and aimed at less of like a monthly format of like a continuing story, like the like I look at Amazing Spider-Man. I'm a giant Spider-Man fan. I love Spider-Man. And it's like right now they're building up. They're on issue like 75, and it's all based on the old school idea of like 77, 76, and I love that. And I don't think you should ever get rid of that, because I think that there's really something special with those legacy numberings and having people know like, oh, it's going on for a long time. I can go back and start there. But what gets lost is, I think that for people who I always go back to the movies, right? The MCU is ginormous. They have made quasi household names. So like, there's no way in hell no one's ever gonna know about Captain America or Iron Man now.
Sure.
Why in the hell are the comic books not selling more? And in my opinion, well, part of it's marketing. Part of it's because Disney doesn't want to market the comic books. Let's be real. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't get it. And it goes for Warner Brothers too. I don't get it. Like, I think Warner's does more, but the fact they do more than Disney is still sad. It's because they're not doing a whole lot, in my opinion. But that said, it feels like, why aren't these characters selling more? And I think part of it is it's so overwhelming for people to sit down and go, where do I start? And that's one of the reasons the binge exists, comic binge exists. I wanted people to feel welcome, because it feels scarier than it really is. And as people as grew up on comics like we have, David, I tell people, like, where do I start? I'm like, just go jump in. Like, jump in the deep water. Just go. Because I didn't have a start. Like, it wasn't like I had the internet to go, hey, what's a good jumping on point for Spider-Man? I was going to the freaking drugstore picking up random issues going, I have no idea what the hell the Shocker is fighting Spider-Man for, but it's badass. So, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like I feel that it's overrated, the whole, like, the jumping on point, in my opinion. But at the same time, I think just to get any kind of a general audience more involved in the medium, which that's my goal, I feel like having that more centralized, quarterly focused format will do better for a mainstream audience, not for the comic audience maybe, or for the right now. But I think maybe in the future, if you kind of gradually went that way, I think it'd be accepted and would be fine. But that's my own theory, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of elements in play. And to be honest, I mean, you could argue sort of conversely that like if you're trying to get somebody who isn't into comics, you might just argue, why don't you give them a trade? Which
Right.
is an argument that you hear all the time of why don't you go to trades, and it's because it's really just not financially
Exactly.
viable.
Right.
But I think that's why there are formats for every kind of degree of
True.
readership. I think the monthly books are sort of for the true
collectors. Yeah, the
collectors.
The collectors,
the people who they can't wait 6 months to find out sort of
right.
what's new,
Right.
For the X-Men or whatever. That they have to kind of get their fix, and month to month feels sort of like the quickest way you can do it without like creators sort of like jumping out of windows en masse. I mean, it's one thing if it's Spider-Man where like, but Spider-Man, they have a writer's room, I mean, like that is a significant undertaking. I mean, it's very rare to have somebody like a Dan Slott, who Dan, he knows his stuff. He is a real craftsman. And so, not only was he writing for, 2 or 3 times a month, but, he was writing issues out of order so he could like get things to like different artists, I mean,
I didn't think about that. Damn.
I assume that's how it worked,
No,
I mean,
yeah, good point.
like,
Yeah.
It just because you've got to have different artists working at the same time. And I salute that guy. I mean, like it's tough. I would not be able to pull that off. I think my max is, would be doing a monthly, and even that it would have to be for characters that I know or characters that I'm able to sort of figure out how they play off each other. But yeah, it's a challenge. Making these things is hard.
Art's hard, man.
After my time at DC, I was a reviewer for a long time. I was the reviews editor at Newsarama for over a decade. So I've had a lot of time to think about this stuff.
I thought I recognized you a little bit there because I frequented Newsarama back in the day a while ago. So that you said, was it around 2000 to like 2010ish area?
No, it was I guess 2009 up until
I
don't know, year and a half ago.
I recognize it because I visited it more back in like 2009, 10ish is when I probably visited more. I still follow it on Twitter.
Yeah. And so I reviewed a lot of comics. I have a lot of time to think about this. And the sad thing is, I think looking back on it, I think there were a lot of assumptions that I've made because as a reader, you think that the comics industry operates in a rational way, and then once you're in it for a little while, you realize like there's a lot of counterintuitive things that like where you're kind of like, oh, there's like things that I would have dinged a book for from a reader consumer perspective that like, readers absolutely are like, yes, I 100% know, I 100% tried, and I 100% couldn't get out of it.
Wow.
And that's not that sounds worse than it is, but the way I'm saying it is that like knowing, for example, like, oh, hey, this character would be a great fit for something, and being told, well, that character, somebody else is using them, or saying, hey, this would be a really cool way to, frame a story, and then realizing like, oh, hey, that guy in this other book is doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Similar. And it's sort of the time is ticking, and you can only kind of Rubik's cube this as best you can. It is a different beast than some of the seasonal creator owned stuff where you can be a little fussier with it, and you don't have to worry about what anybody else is doing. Especially in a shared universe, you do have to worry about what everybody else is doing. So yeah, I think it's just been a real reminder for me that like making comics is hard. This is the hardest job I've ever done. I've done some hard, crappy jobs, but this is the most satisfying job I've ever done.
Absolutely.
But recognizing that like books, even the books that like as a consumer maybe are not your bag, maybe didn't stick the landing for you. Recognizing that like I really can't imagine at this point people just like phoning it in. I mean, even the
Right.
people that you think are phoning it in are probably working their asses off.
Yeah.
And even if I think for them it becomes a little bit of batting average. Like, did this connect? Did I have time to
Yeah.
make this connect? It's a luxury that I am very happy that I have, and I'm recognizing more and more as I continue to do this industry that it's not a luxury that everybody has. That
Right.
and it's sort of one of those things. I can only imagine that somebody like I'm trying to think of somebody at the big two right now who's doing multiple books. Like my pal Danny Lore, who they've got tons of books that they're juggling. And they must be writing all day and all night. I don't know how they have time to do Dungeons and Dragons with me every few weeks. But that's a level of speed that I don't have.
Right.
You
You develop it though, right?
Well, you develop it with practice, but some people are faster than others. And
Right.
I'm fairly picky, which means that it means that the books that I have out, I will be slower with it. Hopefully it helps the batting average, but it just means that I take fewer swings as a result. And so it's tough. It's I wish that there was sort of a better system, but like democracy, this is sort of the best system we've got.
That's so rad to know your background in working as a Newsarama, a legitimate like comic book publication, in my opinion. Like I follow them still for news. At least I thought I still did. If I haven't followed it, it's only recently. But the thing is, like that's really rad because you have a different perspective of like someone who wrote about it, who reviewed it. You saw it from a distance, and now you're in it, and you obviously knew a little bit inside of it too. So it's almost like you're having like the best of both worlds.
Yes,
and
for sure.
which I had no idea. Like talking, so this is like I'm like, man, I could talk to you for hours about stuff. Really could easily.
It's been a great way to gain perspective. I consider myself really fortunate that I had that time at DC, and that really kind of sort of gave me a good foundation to build everything off of. And then at Newsarama, it was kind of, it was boot camp for me. And when you review as many books as I did for as long as I did, you start to really recognize, you learn, well, this is what I like, and this is what I don't like. And you have to articulate it. You have to show your work. You explain, well, this is why I don't like something.
Sure.
Or this is why I like something. And, you kind of start to pick up certain people, tools from other people's toolboxes a little bit. For example, I'm not the biggest fan of decompressed storytelling. I feel like you only have a limited amount of time to get somebody's attention. And I'm not that good of a writer to kind of let it dangle. We got to really kind of give people bang for their buck.
Right.
Books like, it's weird saying them out loud now because now we're finding that there's a lot of problematic people involved. But like, the Cameron Stewart run on Batgirl with Brendan Fletcher and Babs Tarr, Cameron Stewart being a creep notwithstanding, the way they paced that book was really effective. There was it was done in one issues with sort of a mega arc kind of connecting them. Again, another problematic person, but Warren Ellison, Moon Knight. The way that he paced those books was very.
I love those first 6 issues. I ain't gonna lie.
He did a lot of interesting stuff with structure that I incorporate. Rick Remender, I really like the way that he paces fight scenes, and so that's something that I kind of incorporate in my work. Afterlife with Archie was a big influence on me, just tonally, and being able to kind of add that subversion of sort of these wholesome Americana concepts and really kind of put a bleak spin on it. And so, meanwhile, I'm not a big fan of decompression. So like my stories kind of are a reaction to that. Sometimes they're a reaction to each other. When I finished writing Spencer and Locke, it was a very bleak story. And so Going to the Chapel was one of the next things I wrote because I wanted something that was a little lighter on its feet to show people I don't just write bleak, gritty, oppressive books.
Sure.
I think, having that time at Newsarama was very formative. I learned a lot, but it was all very academic. And I always say that, at the time that I put it out, I guess I was 8 years at Newsarama. 8 years at Newsarama was just enough time for me to barely put out my first comic. It's like spending all this time in school, and then you're going to have to take all that theory and put it into practice.
Right.
Figure out like, all right, like what's going to stick around when rubber meets the road.
Right.
Making comics was sort of like the synthesis of all this time and all this research, and all this experience. And I did all sorts of weird jobs, beyond Newsarama. I worked as a newspaper reporter. I worked in PR and publicity for CBS television.
Oh, damn.
All things that I thought would never apply to a career. And I'm realizing it all applied to a career.
Yeah. It all adds up.
It all added up. And there were a lot of skills that back in the day I thought were kind of useless that wound up being kind of like very important survival skills for me going down the road.
Damn.
So yeah, it's been a long journey. I've wanted to do this since I was in college. I graduated in 2008 when the recession broke out. It's 2021 for everybody keeping score. I'm 13 years out of college, and I feel like I'm only starting to kind of really hit my stride.
Right.
But I want to be a 30-year man in this business, and
Same.
I think I'm working year 5, and things are picking up nicely. And I think I owe a lot of that to a lot of kind of the grab bag of experience that I picked up along the way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely inspiring me, more in keeping up with what I'm doing, and writing and keep going and just give me ideas for how to do that. And it's really cool to see someone who's, again, you're a talented writer. I'm not, no bullshit. Like I love the OZ a lot. Again, your pacing, your storytelling, it's evident. Like you get the medium totally, and I love it. And one of the things when I started writing comic books is when I was doing it. I got the idea. The ideas were always there. The ideas were never the problem for me. It was just structurally, how do I get it out exactly the way I needed it to, not suck ass, and also be what it needs to be, and get from point A to point B. I knew what point A to point Z, but I didn't know how A, B, or B, C, D, E, F, G was gonna. I didn't know how that was gonna go. Oh. And when I was, for me, when I was writing, like when I started getting, how do I even I knew how to do it, but how do I get help me get confidence in it? And I started researching, about it. It was really interesting to think about the things like, oh yeah, duh. Dave Gibbons, there's a great book that Dave Gibbons says how to make comics. And it's a great book. I recommend it to anyone who just wants to learn about how things are made. And Dave is such a fantastic, artist, obviously, but still a talented writer. And how he was, he kind of explained, like, this is how the book is laid out. The first page is, you shouldn't have it like this. And he laid it out like, the first page is this because it's the cover. And then the two, I was like, oh God, I didn't even think about that. Stupid stuff like that, right?
Well, it's a great question that you're bringing up. And it's something that I really struggled with for a long time. I grew up in Missouri. I didn't really have a lot of creative role models, so to speak. I never thought that being a writer would be something that, it wasn't even so much that I talented enough to do it. Even deeper than that is, was I allowed to do it? Right. Yeah. And really the way that I kind of tricked myself into this career, I thought, well, maybe I'd be a development executive, sort of using storytelling, but in an office setting. Yeah. And I remember when I was working my newspaper job, I'd work the night shift, and then I'd do my reviews in the morning, and I was feeling really creatively restless. And so I wrote a script. I wrote a short script every single day. I did it for 90 days, just a 6 to 8 page comic script. And I learned very quickly, like, you can't be precious. It's just practice.
Yep. Exactly.
None of them, I didn't get them drawn. You don't have to get them drawn. You just have to write them.
Exactly.
And I learned very quickly, like, you don't learn. The finishing is what makes you learn.
Absolutely.
You crank out the story, you look back, and you're like, okay, this is what I didn't like about it. All right, I'll apply that for the next one. And you learn your structure. And
yes.
And something I remember Scott Snyder told me that I thought was really important. He's like, find comics that you like and reverse engineer them.
Yeah.
He used to do this. I don't know if he still does it, but year one, he would take year one and he would reverse engineer it once a year.
Wow.
Just being panel to panel, line by line. You get a real good sense then of how many panels can you fit in a page. How long can your dialogue be? How many balloons can you fit in a page without it sort of looking a little weird?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If
it's done on purpose, right? Like sometimes people use that to an artistic extent, which is cool, but you have to know the medium and know what your limitations are to do those weird things, right? So, you're right.
To name drop another problematic person, but Joss Whedon, he said something that really kind of kickstarted my career. Dessert first, that just because somebody reads a book sequentially does not mean you have to create it sequentially. Right out of order, right? The things that are sort of speaking to you first. Spencer and Locke, one of the first things I wrote after that first issue was finished was I wrote a car chase because I knew I wanted to do a car chase. And once I was done with the car chase, I was like, well, I don't know where this is going to go in the script, but it's done. It's better than a blank page. Those are a lot of the things that sort of, it took me a while. And then also the advantage of comics is usually you're starting out with people with different levels of experience. When I did Spencer and Locke, that was my first full length miniseries. Yeah. And I worked with George Santiago Jr., who, while that was his first direct market book, he had been drawing his own stuff for a while, just self-published. His work, Curse the Eel, Rare Drops, among others. But that was sort of his first big break. Like, I was still kind of a baby writer, and he was a little bit more of an experienced artist. And then you have, Jason Smith, who, he had done colors over at Hi-Fi. So he knew what a professional comic looked like. And Colin Bell, our letterer, who had actually, he'd done books at Boom and all over and Titan. And so he had actually made comics. Having those four people together, plus, working with, an actual publisher, it's enough to sort of bridge that experience gap. But you want to make sure that, like, you've put in your reps before you start taking a lot of time to try to find artists to spend a lot of money on it. Because trust me, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of heartbreak. It's a lot of setback. You don't want to pin your whole soul and identity on it. On
one series,
if you're not on one series, especially if you're not feeling quite ready for it. You want to get a good head of steam. And I think that's something I always tell people is, not only start small, but like, you can practice and nobody has to see this. It as long as you do the work and you learn from it, that's the important thing. And then once you're ready, then you can publish something that's like really at the level that is of professional quality.
Bro, this has been this is what I needed to hear. I mean, I was plotting last week, but I was being really lazy this week, and I was like, man, I gotta get on this, and I'm just dragging my feet because I'm just lazy. I had a kind of a crazy week. Long story short, my wife we almost bought a house like on Sunday. It was a whole different thing. Funny enough, I found out on the con floor with my buddy Alex. So I'm like hanging out with my buddy, and we're all talking, and I get a text like, my dream house went on the market. We're going to see the house tomorrow. I'm like, huh? I'm like, not even. Okay. So life was kind of crazy this weekend. I'm emotionally exhausted, but as we're wrapping up, I just, I've been trying to kick myself into like doing stuff. And now after talking to you, I'm like, I gotta get my A in gear again because,
I'll say a little bit of another guilty thing. First off, writing, anybody who says you gotta like pound out stuff every single day, like, honestly, I spend so much time doing research. I do write notes.
Right.
I'm just the little wheel is spinning in my head as I'm like, okay, like running through ideas.
Yeah, me too. That's all I do. Yeah.
I write fan fiction all the time. Whenever I'm feeling kind of stuck, whenever I'm feeling like, I just want to get something done. I'm a huge fan of Shazam. I'm a huge fan of Superman.
Cool.
I Spider-Man. Sometimes you just gotta write an 8-pager, with one of those characters. Just the idea that, okay, I wrote something, and that can sometimes kind of be all you need psychologically, to not feel guilty, to free yourself up to write the stuff you really want to write.
Damn, you're just giving me lots of good ideas, and I believe everything happens for a reason. I think I was definitely meant to meet you and talk with you.
Right.
And honestly, like, it's been an honor. I know there will be loads of people, watching this, which they should, because they will learn so much. Like last show I did, the one show I did with Jim, he was just dropping all kinds of knowledge about Kickstarters and how to do, tips and things like that. I'm like, why aren't people should watch this? This is perfect. This is what people need to watch, But David, you're giving me so much for, tips for Kickstarter, but also for writing and just how to get in the industry and just, doing what you love. It's like, you very much feel like a kindred spirit, and
I'm glad to pay it forward in any way. I mean,
yeah,
I had a lot of lucky breaks to get here.
But it's hard work though too, man. You got to be, you got to put the work in too. And that's the OZ is a great example of putting your work in and showing that you can do it. But it takes, again, what's always stopped me as a musician when I was playing music was not following through of finishing the record, not following through of putting the record out and having like a tangible thing, because I was scared, and I would get lazy because I was scared. I was like, well, it's not, it all is a big, but you are actually doing it. And that's why I'm doing Space Demons. It's again, one thing you said was start small. Don't go crazy. Just start small, just a little bit. So
that's why a lot of people do anthologies,
Yeah.
Get a couple of credits under their belt just so they can kind of psychologically feel like a writer.
Yeah.
And that sort of, if that's what it takes to give you permission to write, a full first issue, if that's what it takes to give you permission to write your first full miniseries, do it. I think it's whatever it takes to sort of make you feel like a writer and make you feel like you have permission to reach for these dreams.
Absolutely. And, thank you so much. And I'm going to promote your stuff here in a second. But, I want to say thank you again for jumping on. I want to have you on again, seriously. And, I can't wait to support the third issue of the Kickstarter for the OZ. I'll definitely 100% be supporting that. And also your other books. I mean, I have the first, Locke and Spencer. It's Locke and Spencer, right? I have that on Comixology, and I read a little bit of it. I'm like, I'm already super into it. Like, in the first couple of pages, they grabbed me. I'm like, damn. Like, it's a great setup. Again, I could talk forever about story structure and things like that with you, because I already see things and I'm like, damn, like you get it. You get the medium, man. And it's awesome. And for people who don't know, and I'll put it in the notes here, in the description, I'll put links to everything for you after, probably the next day or so. So if you're watching this and you're like, how do I get your stuff? I'll have it all in there for you, as much as I can get, and send me anything you want to. I'll put it in the description. But yeah, so if you want to know visually, because I prepared this, just, I want people to know if they can look at this stuff. This is on, you can get this on Comixology, but I'm assuming they can get this on your website for the physical books too?
Yes, you can order all of my books at my website at davidpepose.com. And you can follow me on social. I'm at PeposeD on Twitter and Instagram, and David Pepose Comics on Facebook.
Right there. Yeah, we see right there.
And you can subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pep news. And you'll get all the latest announcements on all the cool stuff that I'm working on.
Yeah, man. And, I instant fan, admirer, and I am super stoked to finish reading this. Again, I read 3 pages. I was like, I'm in. Like, I was like, I was captivated.
That's Spencer and Locke's my baby. It's my first book. It's intense. It's a high wire act.
The first page was intense, bro. I can say right now, it was
a roller coaster of a first page. That's my first published page as a comics creator. Wow. I can't believe I started a career on that page.
It's doing so many things at once, and I was like, damn. It hit me because as a storyteller myself, I'm a half-assed storyteller, but as a storyteller myself and someone who writes a little bit, and I'm reading this, and I always look deep into stuff, like, the way panel structures are, but just also the story within the story. I was like, damn. Like the whole Calvin and Hobbes thing at the very, it's like, it's this, and then it's like it's again, if it's uprooted, you set us up with the innocence to like complete darkness, the contrast. I was like, damn, and you executed it beautifully.
Thank you. I
took note of that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this it sure beats digging ditches.
Yes.
This is like I said, it's the hardest job I've ever had, but it's certainly the most satisfying.
Absolutely.
And yeah, no, I appreciate all the kind words. I want to be worthy of them. I'm looking to put in the work, and I hope that with the next few books I have coming out, knock on wood, as long as there's no delays on the book, I should be announcing my next project sometime next month, probably around this time next month, I guess.
Cool, right on, man.
And yeah, it's a very exciting project that I'm still kind of pinching myself that I was able to pull off, and I can't wait for people to get to read this.
I can't wait to hear about it, man. I mean, like I said, I'm a fan. I'm gonna be reading your books. I'm gonna be ordering them. It's a lot of fun. Thanks again, David. Like, I really appreciate it. And seriously, I really, really appreciate you coming on and saying. And again, why have you on? I want to have you and Jim and Charlie all on. It'd be fun to all get a bunch of comic writers, all of us just bullshitting around. Yeah. So yeah, get his stuff, guys. We'll put in the description. But yeah, support David's stuff. It's really, really good. And don't forget my part 1 of 6 pages that I put out, Space Demons, on Webtoons. Check it out. We'll have part 2 hopefully next month. Our artist Antonio is hard at work. He's got 2 kids at home. It's hard. Life is hard, but his work is good. If you see his work, you understand that he puts quality in it. So check that out. Yeah, and follow me at Herman22 2Ns, aka P Thug, and the Comic Binge. I'm on all those different platforms. Look it up. You'll see it there. And Chris isn't here, so I'll just say it for him. Read more comics. David, thanks again for joining us, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. See you, everybody.